excited to have Janet Dean with us. And for those of you guys that are in the situation where you are trying to find your voice and trying to find your brand, Janet is probably one of the most creative people I have ever met. And if it's something that she can create, she'll do it. If she doesn't know how, she usually knows someone who does. Or if she doesn't, she'll just learn it and figure it out, which I think is absolutely incredible. And so I think for any of you that are super creative, it will be really inspiring for you to hear from Janet. I went through her bio and I was going to use it to introduce her. And then I just thought, this is really good, and I would rather you guys hear some of that stuff coming from her. Some things that you should know is that Janet is an art director and she is a web designer, among other things, but that's where her passions have led her to at this point. And so I want her to share some of those things with you and how she found her voice. Janet, thank you so much for being here. We're excited to hear your story and your journey. And I know for me, I've been blown away with so many of the things that you've done and created in my own life. And so I hope that other people get the chance to work with you one day. I loved reading through your bio and where you came from, but I would love for you to share, like, just when you were younger, what were the biggest influences for you in terms of your family and how that shaped you?
Sure. I grew up with a dad who was a graphic designer.
Okay.
And he actually ended up starting his own printing company in the basement. So I would watch him create things on paper and just design things. And so that was one of my first influences into graphic design and that whole industry. And my grandma lived with us up until, I would say until I was about the age of 10. And she would sew, like she got commissioned to sew wedding gowns and just suits and just miscellaneous things here and there. And I loved that process as well. So I would help her sew on like sequins on wedding gowns or learn how to do a stitch. And it was just so exciting for me. I would have her design some clothing that I wanted to wear, probably at the age of 5, and she would actually make it for me. I thought that was so amazing.
That's
To just
incredible.
design something from scratch, and then all of a sudden it was here in fabric form and I could wear it.
That's really cool. And I think that sometimes for a lot of people, when you grow up, you have these influences in your life. And some people, it's like your dad's a doctor, so you become a doctor, or your mom's a lawyer, so you become a lawyer. And sometimes people do it just because their parents did it. Did you find that some of those things you felt like you were almost forced to do, or was it where you just really developed this passion for those things? What do you think that impact had on you?
I don't think I was ever forced to do anything. I think I was self-motivated to do a lot of the things that I did. And I guess I'm really grateful to have had those influences and my parents just letting me be free.
Mm-hmm.
To experience things. My parents used to work late, and so my grandma would watch us, my sister and I, and we'd probably stay up till 11 waiting for them to come home. But I would rearrange the living room, all the living room furniture, and just wait for them to see if they would actually notice. I just wanted to design it a little different and maybe add like a new painting in the background or change up like where the plant was. And yeah, and I've always enjoyed creating things.
Yeah. It's important for people to recognize some of those things that were in them even as a child, because there's a lot of people watching this that don't actually know what their brand is. They don't know what they want to do. And they do know there's those things inside of them, but they don't really know where to put them. So for you, it's pretty amazing that you had like actual physical examples of things that you love because you lived with creative parents. And it's so important kind of where we come from, like those things mold us. But just how you're saying, like you rearranged the room and you talked about how you were really interested in doing like interior design and things like that.
Yeah, I think I really wanted to become an interior designer, but then when our high school counselor, he interviewed basically everyone in grade 12 and asked me what I wanted to get into. I said I wanted to take interior design, and he told me, I'm not sure if you want to get into that. I'm not sure how much money is in that field. And so he strayed me away from that. Then I ended up going to fashion design, and who knows how much money is in fashion design.
Yeah. But you know what? That's such a good point in how like influences when you're younger because you're developing your voice and you're developing like who you are. So sometimes people can influence you in a way that maybe had you not heard that, maybe you would have just went into interior design at that
Oh, I
moment.
probably would have.
So do you think that some of those things were you afraid in those moments?
Maybe I was a little afraid. What really pushed me to take fashion design though was because I was purchasing a lot of vintage clothing, shopping at Value Village and all the secondhand stores, and reworking all of that clothing and then wearing it to school, and then people complimenting me and saying, "Hey, where did you get that?" And so I guess that sort of pushed me as well. And I thought, I'm doing this anyways, so I might as well just go to school for it.
That's
And then I
awesome.
did.
When you decided to do fashion school and you made that decision, what impacted you to take that leap? What did you feel was like, I don't care what anyone says or what anyone thinks, I'm going to do it?
I think the first and only time my dad ever recommended me doing something that I didn't really want to do was when he told me to take business in Mount Royal. So I was actually enrolled at the business program in Mount Royal. And then 2 months before I was to start, I said, no, there's no way I can go into the business program. So I enrolled myself into the fashion design school in Vancouver.
Okay.
And I really wanted to leave the city anyways,
Yeah.
just for something fresh. And I think being a creative person, you always want to get inspired by your environment. And I feel like I'd lived in Calgary long enough, 18, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to move away and maybe meet some new people and get inspired by new surroundings. And that's what I did.
Some people take for granted having the ability to say no and to
Mhm.
really go for what they want. There's a lot of people that had a lot of pressure from their parents to go one way or another. And it sounds like you had that freedom, even though your dad would maybe have suggestions to
Always.
say, like to people that are stuck in the sense of worrying about what everybody else thinks about what they may decide to do.
Stop worrying about what other people think. And you always know deep down inside when you're doing something that doesn't feel right.
Mhm.
I think I've always felt that.
I know when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because I think in life it changes. Like,
Yeah,
3 years
exactly.
from now you could do something else, but the core of who you are is always the same. It's just a different vehicle that you might use to
Oh,
get to those things.
definitely. Yeah.
So maybe talk about some of the different vehicles that you found that have allowed you to live in your purpose and to create.
Oh my goodness. You want me to go back all the way to the beginning?
Just a couple, because I think it's important to realize that there are common things that you do.
I think so. And it just comes back full circle, right? And
Mhm.
you have this, as Oprah would say, aha moment of, hey, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I love doing what I'm doing. After design school, I did work for a designer out in Vancouver. I was her studio assistant and she made accessories, so handbags and hats, scarves, and it was super fun. And then she decided to close up shop. So I had to think about what next. And I thought, well, this gives me the opportunity to just maybe start my own clothing label. I want to visit the city where I was born.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, hey, I'm going to move to Toronto. Started a label out there, probably the craziest thing someone can do. But I had like part time jobs, to support myself. Ended up putting on independent little small fashion shows at bars and clubs and
Oh.
little restaurants, and ended up getting some local shops to buy some of my clothing to sell. So I had maybe about 3 shops in Toronto carrying my clothing, and Vice was actually one of them. And then the store from Montreal ended up carrying my clothing as well. So it was pretty busy, but I was doing everything myself.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. So designing, pattern making, and then I thought, hey, like I need some marketing material too. I went back to talk to my dad and he ended up printing some cards for me, designed some brochures, and we put together a website as well.
It's just so cool to me how like you've come full circle. Like those things for you when you were younger that were instilled in you now are some of the things that you do. Like you create design,
Yeah.
you do marketing, you sew, like you're incredible at all those things. And sometimes people look at someone and they're like, oh, you just are good at all these things. It's like an overnight success, but they don't see how much time and how much energy went into that journey. Probably, I'd imagine with the fashion side, you got a lot of no's. How did you deal with some of the rejection?
It is heartbreaking sometimes, and you think, "Oh, why don't they wanna sell my clothing, and why doesn't my style fit in?" And you just realize there's so many different outlets out there and so many people
Mhm.
that different people like different things, and your styles can be unique to someone else. And you can't please everybody. I
Yeah.
think that's what everyone has to remember, you can't please everyone. Even in the normal world, like with family and friends, you can't even please all your family and friends all the time. How are you gonna do that in your career?
Yeah. That's a really good point. When it comes to finding your voice and
Mhm.
figuring out your brand is like learning how to be authentic. And a big part of that is not trying to please everyone, but putting
Yeah.
kind of yourself first. And those like the things that you're meant to do or to say, and you're putting those things first instead of first checking in, oh, is that gonna offend someone? Or what if I go to this label and they say no? Like you had to develop that self-worth. Like when I think of you, you're someone who's really confident in your voice. When you have an idea, you believe in what you're doing. And where do you think that comes from?
Oh, you know what? This might be like sometimes it's hard for me to talk about, but I think it comes from even like being bullied as a young child. You end up like becoming stronger because of that. I remember I started working out because people were bullying me and saying I was like fat and chubby and this and that. So I started working out and I got beat up in junior high, like
Wow.
pretty bad for I don't even know for what, but I thought I'm just gonna come back stronger. And at that age, I probably didn't think that, but I think now when I look back, I was like, yeah, I did come back stronger because I did start working out. I thought I'm gonna learn some self-defense. So if this happens again, it's I'm not gonna get beat up.
Very
And I think that's where that comes from. At a young age, I was always just true to myself. And when people would bully me, I would just say, hey, this is me.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna be me and that's it. People would make fun of my clothes because they were secondhand, but I loved it. But the next day you'd see someone wearing a similar jacket.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, it probably wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you grow up with a lot of rejections in life, and that's just what makes you stronger.
Yeah. That's what I want. I really want people to get a hold of is oftentimes the things that we feel are the hardest things in our lives or the things that have brought us the most pain. Like getting bullied, I can't even imagine at a young age how hurtful and just belittling and just your self-worth, like how that would affect you. And for you to allow that to make you stronger is why you're so strong, like you said, with your voice and with who you are, is because you had to do that work at a young age. There's
Mhm.
people that have never been challenged. And I think that part of finding your own brand and finding your own purpose is being able to do that work.
Decades of work, but I got there.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You always think back to that high school and elementary, and
Yeah.
it's oftentimes the people that are picked on the most or the people that are the least expected to be anything. They're the ones that end up in Hollywood, or the ones that like it's the people that have faced
Yeah.
resistance that end up being further ahead later in life.
Yeah, you have to like work through things in life. And when a person isn't able to work through things and challenge themselves on a personal level as well as professional level, there's no other place that you can go. You're almost going to stay stagnant. Surrounding yourselves with different types of people and trying to find inspiration on your own, that's a big challenge too, but I think that's how you can find your voice as well.
I love that story of how you were bullied and how oftentimes people will look at something that they're challenged by, the fact that you were different, the fact that you could wear clothes from secondhand that and you rocked them and people couldn't probably find the same things because you had your own unique style. What would you say about having your own personal style and what that looks like for you?
I guess going back on what we were talking about earlier, I just I've been working on it for so long that finally I've come to a place where I'm like, okay, I feel good. This is me. That's what a lot of people going into business have to feel when you're going through all the different branding steps. And if you're looking at something, you say, hey, I really like that, but it doesn't feel like me. When you look at something, you have to think, wow, that person really got me, or that feels like me. And I think I can take that somewhere. Because if it doesn't feel like you, it's just not going to be authentic, as what we were talking about. It's not going to feel real to the next person. And I think that's what people have to feel, a vibe and a connection. And that's the biggest thing I think now in the world is finding connections with things.
Love
And
that.
a lot of times when I scroll through Instagram, this is something that you and I were talking about too, about how a lot of the feeds just look the same. If I
Mm-hmm.
look at one feed, I might think, wow, like that person just looks like the last person I looked at. I can't even differentiate who that is. And
Mm-hmm.
there's some people where I look, I'm like, yep, I know that's that guy because that's his style.
Yeah.
And I love it. And that's him. He's not trying to be anyone else. He's not trying to add that certain filter. Although sometimes the filters make photos look great on the feed, but I could tell it's not really that person.
Yeah. So for you, when you like now you are a brand, you and when I talk about brand, it's not just your business, it's not just
Mhm.
like your external things, it's who you are. I think in order to have a brand, like you said, like it's that authenticity. And so what makes your work so strong is that because you have that authentic connection with who you are, it makes your work consistent. I think that's what you see when you say that, is like you can tell when things are authentic and it's somebody's stuff because no one else can create that. Like it comes from them. So for you, when you're doing your web design and things like that, what is the message that you want to give? What are the things that you want people to feel when they see the things that you do?
I want them to feel something more on a global scale. And I want to go back to like connection and the connection with just everyone as a scope, not just like a certain individual. And I know I've talked about like people just connecting, like people can connect to just certain things and little things, but I want it to feel like we're all included. I don't want it to feel like there's this certain vibe of feeling like you're better than someone else. I don't
Right.
want anything to feel pretentious. And when you feel that, you feel like you can't be a part of that. I want people to look at a site and just feel like, oh, hey, I want to be a part of that. I want to get to know that person. I want to get to know that brand a little bit more. Maybe purchase something from that person as well because I like their vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this as you were talking because when it comes to being like Janet's in a lot of like art direction and just creating a web design for someone is also it is art direction in that way too. It's like you have to put some of your own things aside in order to bring out the other person and
Oh,
their vision and their goals. Only confident people can do that. A lot of times people want to do those things, but they're way more concerned about their style and their voice being heard instead
yeah.
of putting the other person first. I know that you do that. What are some of the things that help you to do that, do you think?
I guess just I have my website already, so
Yeah, yeah,
that's what speaks my truth. And I just want to help other people. And I think just putting in little bits of what I can do helps me. And I think deep down inside, we all just want to help people. And that's what makes me feel good at the end of the day when someone is happy.
yeah.
And I
That's
think when someone's happy with what I've done, then I feel good at the end of the day. And
I
that's
love
what
that.
really matters.
That kind of transitions into I think when we create a brand, like internally when you find that brand and externally when you put it out to the world, ultimately it's figuring out who do you want to serve and
Yeah.
how do you want to serve them. For you, do you have is there specific things that are close to you that you're like this is the people that I feel the most connected to? Did you find that?
With clients or
Mhm.
just in
Yeah,
general?
just with clients and people you want to help.
I think it's always other people that have helped others already. And I don't know what it is, but I can feel from someone if they actually are being authentic or if they're just out there just to make money.
Yeah.
That's a big thing for me too, because if you're actually passionate about something, the money will come, but that shouldn't be the first thing on your list ever.
And
Ever.
I think that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
Between you being your brand, it's coming from a place of this is me, this is who I want to help, versus like you trying to make a brand fit you. And then you're just trying
Yeah.
to sell that brand. And so I think, practically speaking, if you have a business or you're selling products, like it has to come from a place of like your passion, and
Mhm.
it can't be the thing selling you. On the internal side, it's what can I do to be more connected with who I want to help. It's really cool to hear because you know that. And I think that's why you're so strong in your branding. And maybe you don't even realize how strong you are in your branding, but you are absolutely incredible. And I hope that other people have the chance to work with you. I know Janet does do a lot of web design. And if you need any help with any type of creative direction, like I'm going to make sure that there's links for you. Where can people find you? Like, where are some of the places they could find you?
You can find me on my website, artandcolony.com, and that's artandcolony.com, and then on Instagram at Art and Colony.
Art and Colony.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure that there are links for that. Thank you so much, Janet. I feel like she's given so much inspiration and just a picture of what it is looks to connect with like your authentic voice and who you are and live in that purpose. For those of you who have decided to upgrade and keep these recordings, which I encourage you all to, because I think that they'll be really great tidbits to listen to along the way as you grow in your brand and in your voice. But for those of you who stick around, Janet's got some strategic tips that she's going to share in design and just practical ways that you can grow your personal brand and find your voice. So thank you so much for watching. Okay, so we're back with Janet, and this is your like bonus, just a minute to get in the brain of Janet and how she creates. I know sometimes it's easy to take for granted all of the amazing things that we've learned over the years and that come natural for us. And for some of you, you're sitting there saying, okay, I know my voice. I know what I want to do and who I want to serve. For some of you, you're still figuring that out, and this is still going to be helpful. Once you get to that place where you know that, now it's okay, what are some practical ways that I can take what's in here and show it to the world, whether it's through your social media or through your web design? Janet, I think it's important for people to really connect with like how to tell what speaks to them. I just would love for you to share some just tips on how you create for you and for other people.
For me, I guess it would depend on the client that I'm working with and what their product is or what their brand is. And I would say to them, if they were to come to me for a logo or their feel or come up with a brand for me, first thing I would say is, what's your style? What is it that you're into? What are your like top 3 books that you've just finished reading? Who are your most inspirational photographers that you've looked at recently? Favorite magazines? Even looking back and researching at, let's say if you're coming out with a product, researching the products within the last 20 years that are similar and seeing what they've done and what has inspired you to create your product.
A lot of creative people will do research, and sometimes those things, but sometimes, as Janet's saying those things, you're probably like, I don't know what my top 3 magazines are, or I don't know what photographers I like. And that's okay. I think it's a starting point to be able to say, okay, now I need to go do some research and I need to figure out some of those like foundational pieces in order to get what's in here out. So you have to be able to take what's inside of you and give it to somebody else, because that's the practical step of having someone create a brand for you or web design or anything, art direction, anything like that. So for you, like personally, if you were creating something for yourself, how does your process work? What are some of the ways that you get inspired?
Sometimes things just come to me while I'm washing my hair in the shower.
Yeah.
Or I'll be like flipping through magazines again. Like I have a collection of magazines from decades ago. Even if you go to the library and research some of their vintage magazines, that'll give you some great ideas as well. But for me, it could be as simple as reading like a novel, and that gives me that hey, like I'm going to create this, or this is going to make me feel good, and listening to a song, even going back and looking at your own personal style and what you like wearing, that can give you inspiration as well. That can go like coincide with your brand's colors. I find that's really great too. Naomi loves wearing monochromatic pieces or snakeskin print, and you can intertwine that with your design and your website and branding.
That's really good. There's a misconception with branding,
Mhm.
and a lot of people end up doing a logo, and then 3 months later they're doing a different logo, and then a year from then they're doing a different name, and like they're changing their colors. And I think a big part of that is that they haven't really done the work to really be authentic. And the things that I was sharing about you, and knowing your voice and knowing what your brand is so important in having a brand with products or with services or whatever you do. And so I think even looking at your clothes, like you said, don't just do the colors that other people want to do, the colors that speak to you. That's so good.
Yeah, if you have a lot of purple in your closet, why not implement purple into your website?
I love that. That's a really practical thing that people can do. And I'm going to have someone that's in the fashion world as well on here this week, but I think just clothing in general is a brand, right? Like
Oh
how you
yeah.
dress.
You are your own walking brand,
Yeah.
your own
But
personal style.
how many people don't actually know what their style is? You hear that so often. And I think that's part of the work, is figuring out what you love, what you don't love.
It's
Knowing
true.
what you don't love will help you figure out what you.
I think, yeah, like that weeds it out a little bit quicker.
Because even Janet, we've talked about some of this stuff, but talk about like images. Like you're very clear about what kind of images you like to see. Her husband's a photographer and she does a lot of work with him. So talk about that.
We like really crisp, focused photography and classic photography as well. When you go back into looking back at all the black and white imagery that was out there, Peter Lindbergh is one of our favorite photographers, Arthur Elgort, Helmut Newton. Those are like three of our top three photographers. And then there's a new guy. His name's Bastian, and his style. If you go through his Instagram, I can pick out his photos. If I don't even see his name on the feed, I'll know that those are his photos. So yeah, I think consistency obviously is the key, but David and I really like images that we can like feel something from, where you look at it and you think, yeah, I feel something. Sometimes there's photos on social media that you see that just look so contrived that they're just putting out that image for likes. And that's just something that you just shouldn't do that. And if you get a million likes, that's great. But I think it should be something that comes from the heart. And I can see that in imagery. I can see it if that image was created from someone really feeling passionate about that moment, and I can feel that in that image. So yeah, I guess like it's all about feeling.
Yeah, but you're very clear, and I think that's where you're able to be consistent. And something that you said, which I thought was really cool, is just that it's a feeling, and you can put something up to try and get a bunch of likes, or you can put something up that's authentic to who you are and who your brand is. I think that's a lot like life, right? Like you can try and do the things that you think people are going to go for, or you can just be yourself and be your brand. And when you do that, you attract the people that like that brand, and I think what people really need to understand is that it's okay to be unique. It's the most important piece that you'll ever have in your brand, is being yourself. And so I hope that you really get that from what Janet's saying. Like not everyone is going to like crisp and clean, and that's okay. But the people that do are going to be drawn to Janet and David because that's what they're drawn to. And you don't have to fit everyone else's mold. You only have to fit your own and attract your tribe. I
It's true.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's anything else when it comes to web design that you feel would be helpful, if they're just coming off of this video and they're saying, okay, now what do I do? What should I do? Do I need a full website? Do I need just a page? Do I need 5 social media? What do I need to do? Janet, what do we need
Contact
to do?
me. Contact me and I'll help you.
She'll help you. She'll help you. She'll
Or
totally.
what you can also do is if there's something that you feel like you need to learn, I'm still always learning, and I think we all are, that you should search it on the web. I'm sure there's a YouTube video for that, or take a
Mhm.
course. It's so important to always keep yourself up to date and learn some of the things that you want to learn. And from that, you'll get inspiration as well.
That's really good. Actually, just to tie that back around, one of the things in Janet's bio is that as she like grew up in all of these things and learned all these things, and then she met her amazing husband and they started a family, and he went off into photography, and she said, I can create a website for you. And rather than just let someone else do that, because she knew their brand, she went to school, took some courses, even though she probably could have done it anyway. She went and got the education to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it just always learning is just a great tip, I think, for everyone.
That's so good.
Yeah.
And podcasts. I know you're big on
I'm
podcasts.
big on podcasts. I listen to How I Built This with Guy Raz. That's one of my favorite. And another one that's just super fun that I've just started listening to is called Stuff You Should Know.
Love
And
it.
I've learned so much about tea.
You like this podcast and you like this Instagram and you like this book. Your choices are still going to look different for you than someone else. So, like Janet's saying, like all these little bits and pieces create her brand because it's what she loves. And it's okay to love other people's stuff. You just
Oh,
don't want
yeah.
to exactly do exactly what
Don't
they did.
become them, just get influenced by them.
This was
Yeah.
super insightful. And I'm so glad that you were here to
I
share.
hope so.
Yeah. And I'll